Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. You picked a great episode to join us on here. So, our guest today is just an awesome lady. Her name's Lillian Brummet. She is going to share about her life and the life that she has built. A lot of people like to say, in spite of really difficult things, Lillian herself says, and we agree with, she has built her life because of the difficult things that she has experienced and overcome. And it is a wild story. So we can't do it justice, and we don't want to steal Lillian's words or represent things in any other way than the way she wants them represented. So without further ado, let's bring Lillian on right now. So, Lillian, thank you so much for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk tonight. We love having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. I'm really excited about being here.
Awesome. Yeah. We Lily and I had a great conversation a little over a month
Okay.
ago now, and been super excited to have her on because her story kind of exemplifies exactly what we talk about on Salty Ginger Talk, that you can build a, you may not know this is where you're headed, but you wind up in a good spot if you take action, you keep problem solving, you keep working towards something. And we'll have her walk through that in her words, so you don't have to take our word for it. But I've been very excited to kind of have you on so you can tell your story to the audience, because I think there's so much learning in there for people that want it. So, with that said, it would be great if you could just kind of, what we normally do, Lillian, is have you walk through kind of an overview of you. If you want to start with how you grew up, that's great. If you
Okay.
don't, we ask people to start like kind of at high school, how you made your way out into the adult world, and walk us through kind of the sequence of events, high level, and then we go back and do deep dives on kind of the inflection points, or
Sure.
the points that you think were most important and kind of created the person that you are now. So the floor is
Okay.
yours.
Okay. Well, the past defines us. So, um, let's go back to the very beginning. So, I was born in the region of California, Lone Pine, California. My mother was married to an engineer who worked for an off branch of NASA. And this, the, my mom had, I think, four children through him, five, I think. A couple of them, one was a stillbirth, one was a crib death. So she ended up with three kids in the
Mm,
end, and through the same father. And he got into himself into a car accident. And in this car accident, he ended up upside down in a pool, a backyard pool in his vehicle. And so he ended up having some brain damage issues. He came out of the hospital addicted to the medication that they had him on. And there were marital issues, I believe, going on before it, but it, became magnified at that point. And my mom left him. So that was the journey of I was three. I don't have barely a glimpse of a memory of any of this. But beyond that, my mom ended up marrying five times in her lifetime, and not all of them were very wholesome choices. So,
mm,
as children, we were brought along with those experiences, each of us at different ages experiencing things in a different way. Unfortunately, two of her husbands were visiting me at night. And so that became an issue. And the reason why those marriages failed when it was discovered that that was happening, thankfully, my mom at least took action and didn't stay in those situations. But, it left scars and wounds within myself and my relationship with my mom. So when she left her third husband, I think it was, I can't remember, third or fourth. She brought me back. I wasn't living at home. She brought me back now that it was safer. And we didn't really have we hadn't developed a relationship. So now it's one-on-one, right? Both my brothers were on their own before they were 16, right? They're gone, they're out, they're doing their own thing. But I was left there, to decide to pick up the pieces with my mom, and I became her friend and her confidant, which wasn't maybe a position that a child should be in.
Mm.
And so I was growing up really quickly. I had to work in order to pay for my own things, my clothes for school, any activities I wanted to get in. I had to work for that money. So I was already used to that type of ethic by this point. When I was like 13 and a half, I was babysitting for someone, and my friend came and she was like, dude, just say that you babysat later and we'll go to this party that I know it's happening down the block. So we go there pretending we're adults and we go to this party and trying to fit in with the older kids and stuff like that. And I went home, a couple hours later. Unfortunately, her brother had gone looking for us and he discovered that we had gone to a party. He told my mom. And so I came home and I had a garbage bag and a half of my belongings on the door and I was on my own. So that was it. I was on my own. And, the funny thing was, is I never got into trouble with the law. I never did anything like I didn't have troubles at school. I was never called into the principals. I wasn't a bad kid. It's just that our relationship wasn't good. Like we couldn't get along. I blamed her, you put me in those positions, and I was angry about that inside myself. Of course, as a kid, I didn't know that. I couldn't articulate that, right? I just had feelings, and so she had to deal with that, right? And she's this divorced person and trying to survive. And so there was a lot going on, a lot of on both of our shoulders. And I get that. I understand that now as an adult. But as a kid, I was like, why aren't you here for me?
Mm.
Why am I dealing with this on my own? And then I was abandoned yet again. It was the third time in my childhood that I was abandoned by her. And so I had given up hope about the world. So I had become kind of suicidal. Was dealing with depression at the time. I still do. And then I ended up getting caught living on my own when I was 16 and put into a foster home. During that time, I worked. I didn't go to the government. I didn't steal things. I didn't deal drugs or myself, but I worked. I worked in the fields, so onion fields and grape fields and babysitting and cleaning houses and scooping crap out of cow sheds and whatever else I could do for cash, mowing lawns or weeding gardens or whatever. And my favorite gigs were working for the nurseries, the gardener nurseries, because you go in there and you're like, you're harvesting all these tomatoes, and as you're there, you're like having a half a dozen tomatoes throughout the day, because you don't have to pay for food. It was really healthy. And anyway, so I loved working there. And that's how I survived. Had a couple of runaways living with me, so on and so forth. But I got caught living on my own. So I went to this foster home, which was like totally weird. And then I was back on my own again when I was of legal age. And I got a degree or a certificate or whatever you call it in hospitality management. But in order to take on a management job, I needed to get my grade 12. So I was getting my grade 12 through correspondence. And as I was doing this grade 12, I was introduced to these amazing programs and education. I discovered I loved learning.
Mm.
And, I just loved learning. And I became really fascinated about biology and science and plants and stuff like that. And so I was thinking, geez, that's the direction I may want to go. And I started taking higher courses like, the extracurricular courses in math and science and things like that so that I could prepare myself for going into those colleges and universities. So I went to the local university, college, whatever, and I was looking into what courses they had available and where I had to go to get the extra ones in order to get the degrees that I was looking for. And I was really disappointed because all the support that they had for people were if you're pregnant, if you've had children, if you've been living on welfare, and I was none of those things. I
Mm.
had been self-sufficient, right? I didn't fit in those cracks. And that I got really bitter and angry about that because I was like, just because you're punishing me because I stood up on my own feet, like, come on, there was no programs for kids like us, right? So I felt kind of defeated. So I started my own business. I was like, oh yeah. So I started my own business and I ran that successfully for 6 years, servicing upper level people, upper income people living on the lake and stuff like that, helping them with their house and their yard and their kids and stuff like that. So I did that for about 6 years, and then I got involved in this car accident. And I was in the middle. This guy hit us both and put me in physiotherapy for 18 months full time, which means I was there 5 days a week, several hours each day doing different therapies. And so that was torture the whole time. And I fell into real hard depression at that point. Like, I didn't want to go on. And I was like, why go on? Like, everything I do is just getting crushed. And so it was really hard for me and to overcome that and to try to switch my mind into this proactive, okay, you're dealt this. What are you going to do with it? What now? Because there's no one else but me. No one else is going to do it. I got to do it if I'm going to go forward. So I was really, really hard in that depression, and my husband and I had these really deep conversations about like if I was to go on in life, what was I going to do? What would make me want to go on in life? He was trying to encourage me. And I discovered that the main thing I needed is I needed to know at the end of the day that at least what I did that day had an impact.
Mm.
Like I was tired of working to fit in and to have that white picket fence, that you see on TV, or you look across the street and you see other families. I was like tired of trying to do that. And I think the universe or whatever was trying to show me that the whole time, but I wasn't listening. I had this idea, this fixated idea. I have to be one of them. I got to be them. And then this realization came in that this was what I needed to do. And so that began our journey into, our entrepreneurship in the direction that we are now with Brummet Media Group. So,
Holy cow. There's so much there.
yeah. Try not to get too emotional. But yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? I mean, the thing about it is, um, I always say, and look, I'm fortunate. I've been married to my wife for 32 years. We raised our three sons together. And I say this all the time, unabashedly. I know that I'm right. I don't have anything to prove it, but I know 100% that I'm right. There's nothing in the world that's a bigger advantage than growing up with a good mother. That's by far the best advantage that any person can have in the world. And you had the exact opposite. And I'm not trying to cast disparaging remarks on your mother, but you couldn't count on her to have your back, like right from the very beginning. And the fact that you have persevered through that and developed the life that you've developed as an adult is a testament to kind of your, in particular, human spirit and how you can control your mindset to overcome really, really shitty stuff because you have overcome really, really shitty stuff over and over and over again. And I really appreciate it. So first, let me just say, Lillian, I really appreciate how candid you are about it. It really, um, it's very humbling to me when people are so open about really difficult topics like you were. And I really appreciate you being willing to share those things with our audience. So thank you for coming on and being so open and candid about those things. And I also appreciate the fact that you acknowledge how difficult they were to go through. A lot of people try to breeze over those things, or, I'm Superman and I did what I had to do. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to talk about how hard it was and how it was a struggle for like the first, 20 plus years of your life. Like really nothing, really nothing went your way for the first 20 plus years. And
And yet it did. There were individuals that had major impact on me. There was a teacher who cared about me so much that he offered me an afternoon job to help him with his tasks as a teacher. And so I would go to his class after schools, and I would do some whatever chores he had for me, and just help him run his classrooms more smoothly. And he gave me that job, and he encouraged me. You know, the there was an individual. This was a time that I'll never forget. When I was having a real tough time with my mom, and she was with yet another, really poor choice boyfriend. And I was really, really angry that she allowed him to speak to me in the way that she did. I
Mm,
felt like she just stood there yet again and let something happen, right? As a kid, that's how it felt, right? And so I left the house very upset, and I was crying in this alley. Like, he would, stupid. Why would you go to a dark alley all by yourself, right? But there I am, you know, all by myself as a female child, crying my eyes out. And this guy walks by. To me, he was an old man, but he was probably, 28 or something for all I know. And he walks by and he had this total look of compassion, like not a creep, not a weirdo. You could just body language, you could just see it all over him that he didn't want to leave. He was like, "Are you okay? Like, is there something I can do for you?" And I was like, "I'm okay." And I'm like, "Holy crap, someone caught me." And I'm trying to, like, don't look at me, everything's fine. Here's my new face. And he didn't buy it, he's like, "Yeah, I don't, he says, I don't really feel comfortable, and he was kind of, and then he left. And I was like, holy crap, someone cared,
mm.
and that hit me so hard as a kid that I would turn to that time and time and time again in my memory that someone would stop and care, you know. So that really affected me. And then there was another person who taught me that I had the power to heal my own wounds, right? So, okay, so someone put that fish hook in you, and it's sitting there, and it's like a horrible, ugly wound because it's been sitting there a long time,
Mm.
and it's hooked into you. And while they're no longer tugging on the line is still there, and it's infected, and all that. And if I take that hook out, and if I clean that wound and I tend to it and I allow it to heal, I'll always have that scar. I'll look in the mirror, I'll see that scar, but I can heal that wound. I don't have to let that wound poison the rest of my body, right? And it continue to fester. I can heal that wound. And I had that power. And when she put it to me in that way, I got very proactive. I was like reading every self-help book I could get out of the library. I started talking. My husband was very good about helping me talk. I wasn't good at the whole talking thing about how I'm feeling. And so he got me to do that, right? And it was in this really safe thing. Like, he wasn't trying to fix me. He wasn't trying to give me oh, well, here's the tool you need to do. He wasn't doing any of that. There was none of, he
Mm.
was just there, and he accepted it. And I was like, well, this is weird. I can be like this, and that's okay. And so I became reliant on having that trust with that person. And I still do. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and just something to point out there. If you think about all three of those examples that Lillian just gave, so the teacher,
mm,
the Good Samaritan in the alley, and then her husband, the one thing they all had in common is they're people that just supported. They just were there. Like they just, all they did was said, "Hey, I care. It matters to me." Like
mm,
I'm sure the teacher gave you a job, but I mean that was a way to enable you being around in a good environment, right? That's clearly what that was. It wasn't about the job or the money, and I'm sure the money was important to you because, like you said, you got you were kind of on your own, not kind of, you were on your own at a very early stage in your life. But my point here is a lot of times it's just enough to let someone know, hey, you matter to me. Like what goes
mm,
on in your world matters to me. Like it's important. to me. You don't have to know the right thing to say. You don't have to have a solution for it. You don't have to fix their problems for them. A lot of times it's just enough to say, hey, it matters. It
Mm,
matters to me. Just know I care. Like that's enough. I think that's really important because it's very interesting to me on our podcast. We did not start off covering a lot of the heavy subjects that we cover on the podcast. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm very comfortable in these conversations because I'm not trying to solve somebody's problems, but I do think it's so helpful to other people who are going through things that you've talked about. There's people out there right now listening to this that are in a relationship where there's an adult that's acting very inappropriately towards them, or they're struggling to find their way in the world, or they're dealing with depression, or they're having suicidal thoughts. And you're not the only person that's going through that. And there are people out there that care. You just got to find them. Like they're there. You might not even know who they are, but you've got to find them. Like, the Good Samaritan will walk past you while you were crying in the alley. That's just a person that cared. And that was a big, big thing in that moment in your life. And that's all you got to do. Just show up. Just show up for people and it matters. So
mhm.
just really, really appreciate you sharing that because I think it's so
Oh,
important.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have lots of different guests and they have a wide variety of experiences, but I always look for commonalities for people because, like, we're going to get into what Lillian and her husband have built together, and you guys aren't going to fucking believe it. Like, it's amazing. When you just heard what you heard, to look at where she's at in her life now, it's a testament to Lillian and her husband for sure. But you won't believe what they've built together, which is so cool. But that's one of the things that we see. People have come on and talked about similar experiences, sexual abuse as children, losing their own children to death, suicidal thoughts, depression, those kind of things. The thing that always, 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 and I rarely make global statements, but it'll make that one. The thing that always leads them to a better place is action. And
Mhm,
sitting around and doing nothing is rarely the right thing to do. If you want to get to a better place, you've got to take action. And I heard you talk over and over and over again about taking action to kind of find your way through these difficult periods in your life. And look, so what you described, some of it led from one different difficult period to a completely different difficult period. It wasn't even like you were going to a better spot, but at least you were making progress towards something that was different. And sometimes that's enough. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'd be curious to hear what you thought about that.
Well, um, I have two schools of thought of that. So I have the uh, on the ground crawling through the mud view, which is, man, when is it going to get better? And, that struggle, looking back, not now, but looking back, that's how it felt.
Hmm.
Looking back from a different perspective, however, I feel like what happened was necessary for me to become the person I am today, right? I wouldn't have run the radio show for 10 years. I would have never run the podcast for 2 years. I would have never run the blog for the last 20 years. I would have never published 8 different books. I would have never written a column for 6 years that was published internationally about, zero waste initiatives and how to reuse, reduce, purpose, refuse, all those R's. There's about 10 different R's, but I would discuss all those different R's in that. And, all of those things would have never happened, right? I probably would have never met my husband because I would have been in a totally different place mentally, right? And so I'm just really, really grateful for what I went through, looking back now with a different perspective from a person that's a little bit more sturdy, standing on her 2 feet, feeling more whole. 10 years ago, I was feeling fragile as glass. I mean, I was dealing with, parents passing away and, really heavy grief, that elephant weight of grief on your chest. And, the trauma that that brings up. I lost a friend, a really close friend, things like that. So when those things hit you, sometimes trauma from the past will come up too. Just because you're feeling pain, like it's just your brain starts bringing up other things that, you felt pain for. And so sometimes you're reliving them and it can be difficult. But I found that writing was my go-to. So when I was going through the healing process, I would write, I would purge all my thoughts, and it didn't matter what my thoughts were, didn't matter if it made sense, and then I would burn it. I would put it in a, safe container and I would burn it. And then I would do that over and over and over and over. And much later, I learned that that's actually a therapy. It's a tool that they use in therapy um, for because it's like you're releasing the thoughts to the universe and you're letting them go and watching them burn and go away is a whole thing. It's like this transition that you go through, which I didn't realize. But that was one of my greatest tools for that. For others, it might be talking, like verbally talking, but maybe you're not feeling like you have a safe place to go talk. So just talk to the walls. I mean, dude, I do. I totally do. So, I mean, maybe it's a writer thing. I don't know, but I totally talk to the walls. So when no one's around and the windows are closed, But yeah, I just go ahead and I talk it out how I'm feeling and just let it go. And I feel better for it. Later on, as I, grew into this career and did the various things that we sort of briefly talked about there a second ago. I learned that by telling my story and helping other people tell their story was such a powerful thing. Like what you do is such a powerful thing because, for one, you're encouraging your guests to go ahead and tell their story and share that and have that impact in the world. And they walk away with, wow, I had this moment, this time when I had this impact in the world. And that's a huge thing for them in their life and perhaps encourages them to continue on that path. But also for yourself, for your listeners, like telling sharing those stories, every person that's listening is going to have an impact from that. I'll never forget when I heard from a family that used to listen to our Conscious Discussions talk radio show way back in the day. And she was saying that every evening, her and her family would get together at the table and they would play one of the archived episodes. And then they would have a discussion about what was covered during that topic. And she said it created this whole family dynamic. And people would, as they're eating, they're listening to this thing and digesting this information. And it created a conversation in the family as well. And I thought, wow, just to have that one family impacted like
Yes.
that. That really encouraged me to keep going. So, feedback is everything. People let us know how you're feeling.
Totally. Yes. I love that. What a great story because like that's what it's to me that's what it's all about. It's why we do the podcast because I've got a full-time gig. I don't do this for money or fame or any of the other like whatever motivates and I don't want to sound judgmental. It's fine if you're doing podcasts for money and fame. Good for you. That's not why I
Mhm.
do it. We want people to pursue a life that's meaningful to them because they're going to be happier and they're going to make their own world a better place. And, you know, that's going to make the entire world a better place if enough people do that. That's the whole point of why we do what we
Mhm.
do. So I love your story of being able to actually hear about the impact you had on that family. What a cool thing that was.
Isn't it though? And those
Yes.
those are memories that'll never fade. That was a decade ago or more now, right? But I still remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've gone through and you've shared all these things. You talked
Hmm.
about your husband helping you have conversations to get you through one of the harder periods of your life, and that puts you in a position so that you guys could open your media company and build your media company. Can you kind of walk us through what that progression looked like? How did you get it started? What was the idea? How did you build it? Et cetera, et cetera. I'd love to hear that because
Okay.
especially after everything you just shared. I want people to remember everything that Lillian just shared and then listen to what they've done because it's so cool.
Okay, well, my husband is he's an accomplished musician, drummer, percussionist. He was playing full-time bands as well as working a full-time day job. So he didn't have a lot of sleep for the first few years that we were, together. And at this time, he was experimenting with manufacturing his own drums with a fiberglass frame and a few different things that he was doing for other people. And then he started teaching just casually. Someone, can you teach me how to do that? Yeah, okay, come over. And, you know, so he was like, I think this would be a cool thing to start a business around. Maybe I could do this as a business. And so while he was thinking that, he was also looking into he loves science fiction stories and space and dealing with time, and he's such a good writer. And in the fiction realm, I just love his stories. And so he had been writing these stories, and I was like, dude, these are fantastic. You haven't had training with this, or no, no. I was like, okay. So we came across this course that talked about how to be a writer. So this wasn't a creative writing course or here's your formula to get rich. It was, here's the business.
Mm,
These are the different common ways that people make a living as a writer. Often you have to have your fingers in multiple pies. This is how you run your business, how you claim your taxes, how you manage your queries, how you organize things so that you don't get lost and say, "Oh, well, 3 months ago, didn't I have that article submitted to somebody? I can't remember," right? And especially as a freelance writer, which I started out as, you have to, you're submitting things and it might not get approved for 3 months, and then it might get held in their queue for up to 6 months before it gets scheduled for a magazine. And then that magazine gets published whenever. So it's a long time before you actually get paid. Or,
mm,
some of these people want 6 months, some of these people want 18 months of rights of ownership to that article. And then once it comes out of that, if they decide not, they're going to go a different way, they're not going to use it after all, you can still take that article and send it to someone else. So who's that going to be? So you have to have that set up so that you're constantly doing this so that you have a paycheck coming in, right? So there
sure.
was all this information as well as like how to do your taxes, all that kind of stuff. So that got us going. And their first writing assignment, their first get you going, type assignment was try to come up with an article that you think could be turned into like a column, a regular series. And so I came up with the Trash Talk series, and it was picked up like a week and a half later. And within a few months, it was published in multiple different publications. And then it was like in Africa and the UK, and it was in Ireland. It was all over the place. It was pretty dang cool. Some of them were bigger places, some of them were smaller publications, but I was thrilled to have it all over the place. And I got to share my passion for having an impact on the environment through proactive, what am I doing in my life? What am I doing in my business, at my job site? How am I making my purchases? These types of personal activities that we do every single day that have a profound impact on the environment and also policies moving forward. Every choice we make, every choice we make, every video we watch, every penny we spend impacts the future policies. So, where do we want the future to go? So, how we're spending our money right now today determines where the future is going to go. So, I was showing people this and showing them also how they can save money in their own budget by just reusing and repurposing things that are common. And then I started looking at, well, wow, we can do like social impact with our waste. Believe it or not, there are places that really want our donated waste items. And so there are school classrooms, there are, craft places, there are arts people, there's places like garages that'll take your, cut up rags from your old clothing. There's all kinds of things we can do. So anyway, obviously it's a passion of mine. So I started getting into that. And about gosh, about 7 years later, it became a book. And now it's a series. It's 2 books, and it's by the same name, Trash Talk. You can find it on Amazon.
Well, and you'll send it to us as well so we can put it in the show notes, yes?
Yes, yes. I think I have them in the chat there for you too.
Yeah. Awesome. We appreciate that. So you started off with the writing, and
Mhm.
your husband was a drummer and he did teaching. Um, and then how did you expand into radio and to blogging? And didn't your doesn't your husband still have like a drumming business, a teaching
Yes,
business? Yeah.
yes. Okay,
Talk
well,
about all that stuff too.
okay, so the blogging came up because as a author, one of the shoulds back in the day was you had to have a some way of reaching your audience. And you still do. But at the time, it was blogging was the thing. I still obviously run the blogs and very successfully. We have like 30,000, visits on our main blog every month. And anyway, so I started this blog as a way of attracting the readership to our books. And eventually people were like, you should really, after I've been on some radio shows and podcasts or radio shows at the time, actually, they would say, you should really consider having your own show. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, no, no. Like me? Ah, you know, I was really shy and I thought, oh no. And then it took a lot of prompting, people saying it over and over and over. And I thought, geez, maybe I will, because I have a heck of a lot of contacts now, and I'd love to have them on as guests, and we can talk about what they're doing, blah blah. So that's how I started. The blog helps support that, right? Because I could share the podcasts and the archived links and all this stuff. And then, also the radio show supported the blog, and they both pointed to our author career, which was where we were focusing our energy at the time. Dave was also on the other half of the business. He was also still performing in bands. He still had his teaching going on. When we bought our house, we converted the lower half into a studio. When we sold that house and bought another house, we did the same thing. We bought it on purpose with a lower half that could be converted into a studio. Now we're downsized. Just last year, we moved to like a senior living sort of semi-retirement area, a community. And so, there's no more drum studio. So we thought, well, how are we going to do this? So Dave started going portable. So he would go mobile. He would go to his students directly at their home. And now we have a space that we found that's affordable for us to rent. It's this beautiful acoustically designed room, like choirs practice in it and other musical events are held there. Totally affordable, right downtown, free parking. So it's perfect. So we've got that set up. We've been doing that for a few months now, and we're booked into the end of next year. Now we have bookings for our drum events there. So he's still doing that, but no longer in our home. We had to sort of pivot, right? And find a way around that, find a solution. Took us a little while to find the right place, but now we're set up, and it's been going for a couple of months and it's going great. So that's still going. The From the radio show, I went into this podcast for a couple of years, which was called Authors Read. And that's where I had my author friends, my contacts come in and share just a short reading of their work. And sometimes they would do it live. Sometimes they would send in an MP3 with some background, music or birds or something. And it became like this cute little thing that I was able to do for a couple of years. And that was just a personal passion project. I just had fun with it. And it helped me solidify my relationships with like publishers and agents and various people that I had developed these relationships with. And I wanted to like keep that going. So it was a way for me to do that. In between that, I was running the Brummet's Muse newsletter, and that served about 5,000 subscribers. Then I had to like start letting things go, right? I was doing too much. I was just too much. And my goals and my dreams weren't being checked off my list. So the busyness was getting in the way, and I had to
Yeah.
let things go as much as it hurt sometimes to let some of those things go because you love them, but they're not getting where you need to go, right? So I had to let them go and refocus, pivot yet again, and refocus my energy to where it towards actions that are going to take us closer to our goals. So that's where we're at now. We've been working towards this moment of being semi-retired, and now we're taking the time that we have as in our semi-retirement. We can pump a lot of that back into our business and make that our make it where we have been envisioning it to be. So it's very close, and we're getting there. We have two more books coming out very soon. We have a short story collection coming out after that, like lots of stuff in the works behind the scenes. So it's keeping us very, very busy still.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Where does where does purple snowflake marketing fit into all of this?
All right, so it was like my theory of marketing. So as an author, you're there's something like 6,000 books published every single day in
Oh, good
English.
Lord. Yeah.
Every single day. Okay, so how are you going to stand out among those? So if you're in a snowstorm of other authors, you want to be that purple snowflake. Eventually, you're going to have a heck of a lot of purple snowflakes, and you're going to end up building yourself a purple iceberg, which is going to be the next book. We're working on it now. But it teaches you basically everything that we learned from the very beginning, but in a very compact, you don't have to get it from all these different courses and classes and books and everything that we had to do over the decades. It's all in there in one step-by-step guide, Purple Snowflake Marketing. So it shows you how do you figure out how much of your home you can claim and all of those kinds of things. How do you figure out how much of your vehicle you can claim? How do you do an in-person appearance? How do you even approach someone to set up an in-person appearance? What are the most effective and efficient ways of advertising or we talk about a lot of the underground, more frugal ways of promoting yourself. So there's a lot of like backdoor, back end, guerrilla market, the hands-on, marketing is covered in there. We talk towards the end of the book. We also talk more about like running a blog or a podcast or a newsletter. So we do touch on those. Also, some really great tips for running your socials, meaning your Facebooks and whatever, more efficiently and effectively, and setting up the platforms so that there's this continuancy. When they go to any place online, they're going to know it's you just by a simple glance at that page. They know it's you. They recognize the logo, they recognize your icon, the colors are the same, everything, right? So you want this continuancy. We help them choose those colors by sharing, all of that information that we've learned. So all of that is in that book. The next book that's coming out, like hopefully February, maybe January, and that is the next step in your marketing plan. So we're okay, you've got your basis down. You've got a good solid platform to stand on now. You've built your brand name. You've got some name recognition, some market authority going on, social, recognition going on. Now it's time to build on that. And we're going to show you how to do that. So that's the next book. And it takes them on that. Some excellent, excellent information there. All along the way, we're helping them avoid spending a heck of a lot of money. So whether you're an
Mm.
entrepreneur or an author, you're going to benefit from this book. It's geared towards authors, but if you have a widget that you're selling or a service that you're selling, just substitute mentally the word book for your service because it's really the same kind of basic information I say basic, but it it crosses platforms, it crosses genres. So it's very helpful for people to learn how they can save money, extend their budget, things that they can do right now today that can help them build their business for tomorrow. How not to feel overwhelmed. We cover that quite a lot in the book about like pacing yourselves, having an action plan. You know, what do we think we can get done this year? What would we like to get done this year? How are we going to break that down now? There's 12 months in the year. What, how are we going to break down those activities so at year 12 or month 12, we've reached our goal? So then you have an action plan. January, I need to do these activities. How am I going to fit those in my January schedule? And you do that and you book it in. There's going to be times when you aren't going to accomplish it. Nobody is 100% every single day, right? So there's going to be things that come up spontaneously. You got to put that aside and deal with these things. And it hurts because you don't want to. And this is nagging at you and causing you sleepless nights. But then you get back to that list because you know it's there. This is the next thing that you're going to get back to as soon as your schedule allows you to. So you have this focus and it'll eventually get you towards that goal that you're aiming for. I find Dave and I found that as like we sit down every month, we have a monthly meeting. Once a year, we sit down and we say, okay, this is what happened last year. These are the things we didn't accomplish that we wanted to accomplish. Are we still wanting to go that direction? If we are, let's start with those things in this next action plan. And what else did we think we might be able to fit in that year? It's always it's always more than we can actually fit in. But, you know, we have this sort of discussion, and then what can he do? What can I do? How can I support him in what he's doing today? So we have these discussions, and it's really important to have those discussions with your team, whoever it is. My team happens to be my husband, but you know, other people have a team of people, or they outsource to people. Have those discussions, and make sure that you're supporting each other. What are you doing today? How can I support you with what you're doing today? And it works out. You just focus and try to take one step. Sometimes you just have to go, okay, today if I have too much and I'm just in a state of overwhelm that I'm blocked. I'm like, ugh, I just want to like walk away from all of this. Start with just one simple thing. I learned this from one of my author course coaches, and yes, we always have coaches going on and mentors in our lives, always, always. And one of the things that we were taught by this one person was break it down to just this one thing today. If it's a phone call, great. You made that phone call today. Awesome. Celebrate it. Dude, that was all you had to do today. Anything else on top of that? That's gravy, man. That's ice cream. You're good to go. And so it changes your mentality. Another thing I've learned to do is to look at the long list of to-dos as this is my opportunities file, right? So when my schedule opens, I can take a look at this file and there's all kinds of opportunities for me to consider bringing into this schedule as opposed to, oh my gosh, I haven't done all that. Look at this. I mean, look at this. Oh my God, right? So it just changes your mentality to all of a sudden, oh, this is doable, you know, simple little things.
I love that. On that last point, one of the things I try to explain to people, I'm going to ask you a few questions around topics like this coming up, but
Hmm.
well, people say to me a lot, you're able to pick yourself up and get back after it when things don't go right pretty quickly. How do you do that? And I always try to teach people to think the opposite of whatever is bothering you. So, what I mean by that is sometimes it feels like everything is coming down on you and it's just like overwhelming. You don't know what to do. In those instances, do not look at the big picture. Do exactly what Lillian just said and say, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it done. And then I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it done. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it done. And you start knocking things out. And pretty soon you go, hey, I'm making some progress here. This isn't as bad as I was making it out. I'll figure out my way to kind of maneuver through this. But when it feels too big, focus on the small. And then the opposite is also true. So let's just say you're driving to work and your traffic is heavy and you miss every light and your coffee splashes and spills on your pants and you're going into an interview and the Wi-Fi is moving slow and all these little things just start to irritate you. That's the time to go to the high level and go, hey, you know what? I got an awesome marriage. I've got awesome children. I've got an awesome job. The sun is shining today. I live in a great place. I live at the best time in human history. That's when the little stuff is bothering you. Think about all the good things and be grateful for all the good things that happen in your life. And those little things will just kind of melt off and wash away. Now, I just made that sound super easy to do. It's not. It's not nearly as easy as I just made it sound. But if you want to get to a better mental place, I am telling you that is the way to do it. Now, being able to do that can be challenging. And that was leading into my question for you. When you, and I would be curious to know if this has changed over the years, what were some of the mental techniques or tricks that you used to kind of convince yourself to keep going? Because you went through some tough stuff and some pretty dark times. You were pretty candid about saying, hey, what's the point of going on at one point in your life? How did you work through that? What mental tools did you use to help work through that, um, to help you get to a better spot?
Well, back in the day when I was young, it was anger. I was angry,
Mm,
and anger was my fuel. I tough. I toughened. It was funny. People that youth that I remember me and look me up now. They had such an impression of me then, and I felt so vulnerable all the time back then. But they always saw me as like this toughy person. But I guess I put out that, toughy tough, and I was and I was angry. Um, One of my mom's husbands found out where I was going to school once, and he came up to me and he said, and well, this sounds terrible. It was one of the best things, actually, but he said to me basically that I wasn't going to be able to look in the mirror without remembering him. I'd never close my eyes without remembering his presence, to put it lightly, and things like
mm,
that. So when he told me those things, instead of feeling like, oh my God, he's right, you know, I'm always going to feel his touch and I'm always going to stare at that door in horror, looking to see if that handle's going to move. But actually, it really pissed me off.
mm,
And I was like, you know what? Screw you. You know, screw you. You're not going to be a part of my life. I'm never going to think of you again. You know, you're never going to cross my mind again. And so I got really angry. That wasn't exactly the truth, but that's how I felt. I was
sure.
like, oh, I got very, very. Ugh. So when I was later on, when I was basically kicked out of my house, my mom's house, I was looked at this, oh, she's such a black sheep. No one can do anything with her. And I was like, oh, yeah, despite you, I'm going to succeed. And I'm going to throw that in your face, you know? And so I was angry and I was fueled by that unhealthily, but it fueled me and it
Mm,
pulled me out of that rut. I was just like, that's it. You aren't going to tell me what to do. And I stood up and I started doing what I had to do, right? I didn't always do it gracefully and I didn't always make the right choices, but that was my fuel. And it wasn't until I was willing to trust in love, when I could grow to the point of trusting in love and having a trusting relationship, which is where Dave came in. When that happened for me, I realized that I was strong enough to be vulnerable, right? And at first, that was super scary. It was like,
Mm.
holy crap, now I'm vulnerable. Someone's going to look at me and they're going to know, you know. But that actually ended up making me feel good about myself that I could be vulnerable enough to stand here and say, okay, I can risk this, you know. And and that was a really cool thing, a really cool place to be. When the accident happened, which was, I would say, my one of my deepest, darkest moments of all time, I was dealing with an incredible amount of physical and mental issues, and I felt very fragile, super fragile. And I think the hardest part of it was now I was dependent on Dave and the people around me, the people who were supporting me, like the nurses and doctors and physiotherapists, oh my, all of them. So, and they were all wonderful, great people who really encouraged me to heal. But but I felt like super dependent on them. And I'd never felt that way before because all along, even though I, was in this relationship with Dave, I always had my own income. I had my own everything, my own car. I was totally dependent. Well, now I'm like reliant on, right? And that was a totally vulnerable place to be. And I thought, well, how can I feel not so vulnerable? How can I contribute to the family? How can I, do something that makes a difference, but also contributes to the family? And so that's where the writing came up into everything much stronger than it ever did before.
Yep. Um, so it's interesting how you this will sound really strange, but the way you describe that is exactly how Michael Jordan built his basketball career. He used when he felt slighted or like people didn't respect him, he used the anger from that to fuel himself to work harder, to learn more about the game, to get himself into position to show people, hey, you were wrong and fuck
Mm.
you. Like that was kind of his mindset, you know? Like
Right.
it just made when you were talking, it made me think very much about Michael Jordan. That meme of Michael Jordan crying was him at his Hall of Fame speech. He broke down in tears when he was talking about remembering all this stuff.
Wow.
So found it super interesting. Um, what
So,
is? Go ahead.
when you
Yeah, go ahead.
mentioned that, I just wanted to say that um, if there's someone listening right now who is in that mode of being angry, and you're thinking, there's something wrong with me, and how come I can't heal in like a peaceful way or go about this in a peaceful way? All I feel is anger right now. Anger can actually be a good thing. It doesn't seem like it at the time, and you may not picture yourself as being like on a healthy path, but you are, because anger can be a really healthy tool sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's there for a reason. Um, I'm anger's always been a challenge for me. I have a very short temper. And it's hard to tell by looking at me. I'm super Irish. Um, but there are times when that's a huge benefit. There are times where it's a huge problem.
Right.
And you have to learn how to harness it if it's there and make it into something productive. And you could say the same thing about anxiety. You could say the same
Mhm.
thing about any emotion that you have. If you learn how to understand it and harness it correctly, it can be a benefit. And if you allow it to consume you and allow it to make impact your decisions in a negative way, then it can be a huge
Mhm.
detriment, right? So I think it's important that people understand there is no good or bad or right or wrong in terms of your kind of reaction to things, but you have a choice on how you actually take action against those things. And that's where you make the difference in your life, and either towards the life that you want or away from the life that you want. And I try to choose neutral words
Yeah.
when I describe that to people because I think we spend so much time judging ourselves and being harsh on ourselves instead of saying, hey, this is just the reality of the situation. I might like it, I might not like it, but I'm not going to assign a personal value to it. I'm just going to deal with it, you know?
Absolutely. It's okay to feel what you're feeling and to go through what you're going through, but to try to, despite your emotions, try to slip your mindset back into a solution mindset, a proactive solution mindset where you're making the conscious choice that this is how you're going to respond to this situation rather than like a knee-jerk emotional reaction. But having those emotions is, yeah, we're gonna have them every minute, every day, you know? Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, totally. And look, I think Lillian's a perfect example of this. You don't get a choice sometimes of what happens to you in life. Like sometimes really shitty things are going to happen to you and you don't get a choice. They just happen. You don't have control over them. What you do have control over is how you react to them and what you do
Mhm.
about them going forward. And I absolutely love and commend Lillian for the thought process. And she said it a couple of times already that she actually has grown to appreciate all of those difficult experiences because they've helped her build the life that she has now. And I think a lot of people might hear that and go, well, what the hell? How could you appreciate all those terrible things happening to you? But I completely understand what you're talking about. And I don't have nearly the difficult things in my past that you have, for sure. But, for example, in 2005, my wife and kids were in a terrible car accident. And they were driving, we lived in New Hampshire at the time, and they were driving down like a country 2-lane highway. And she was going straight, and the guy that was going the opposite direction tried to make a left turn and turned into her car, not in front of her car, into the side of her car. So they're like, I have no idea what that idiot was doing, but she had no choice on what was happening. He just turned left and hit her. And she was going about 60 miles an hour when it happened. All of our kids were buckled into their seats. She was not because she'd been running errands and she got thrown out of the hole where so fortunately the windshield did what it was supposed to. First it cracked and then it flew out of the window or flew out of the opening. And she went through, she didn't hit the windshield, but she went through the hole somehow during all this going on. The car flipped over twice and rolled over twice. And she got thrown out through the opening in the window and she landed on a grass island. So like if she'd have landed anywhere on the pavement, she probably, I don't know how she survives, but she landed
Yeah,
on a grass island. So she had some compression fractures. And this was back in dial-up internet days. This was
mm,
2005. So uh, they were trying to call my house and I was on the internet because I was taking a college class online at the time. And so they called my neighbor, and my neighbor came down because I lived out in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire. And I had one neighbor, and they called her. And she came running down and said, hey, Sherry and the kids have been in an accident. You need to get into town and get to the hospital. And so, of course, I made the 12-minute drive in about 5 minutes. And I drove past her car, laying on its side on the highway. And so I'm like,
oh
oh,
no.
they just said it was an accident. They didn't say it was good, bad, or indifferent because they didn't want me to do what I did, which was, drive like a psycho to get down to the hospital.
Right.
And so I got to the hospital. I had to drive past the accident to get to the hospital. So I saw the car. The hospital was about 3 minutes away. I got there. And when I went into the emergency room, the first thing I saw was all three of my sons, who at that point, they would have been what, 11, 8, and 5. And so they were all sitting on one table, and I could tell they were all okay. They were clearly upset because they'd just been in a big fucking car accident. But they were okay, and the nurses were taking care of them. I went over and checked on them and said, "Great, nothing to worry about there." And then I went to find my wife, who was in a different area of the emergency room, and she was not great. She was shaking, and she was white as a sheet, and she was immobilized because they didn't know what was wrong with her at that point, and they were running getting ready to run x-rays and CAT scans and all that stuff. And it turns out what she had was a couple of compression fractures. She was fortunate there was no internal bleeding, but none of us knew that at the time. And so I
Right.
got I got over to her, and the first the first thing she said to me was, "It wasn't my fault." And the first thing I said to her was, "I don't give a fuck." Just like that. Like, I could care less
Right.
if this was entirely your fault. I said, "I just want you to live. Just
Right.
live. I don't care if you're in a wheelchair. I don't care if I have to wipe your ass for the rest of our marriage. I don't care about any of that. I just want you to be alive. That's all I care about." So that's what
Right.
we're focused on. And that experience, although it sucked, was really good because it really illustrated to me that, I was still climbing the corporate ladder and I was working 80 hours a week and blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, none of it mattered. Like, I called my boss. It was a Saturday night. I called my boss and I said, "Hey, my family's been in a car accident. I don't know how bad it's going to be. I'm not going to be at work Monday. I have no idea when I'm coming back. When I have more information, I'll call you." And I hung up the phone, and I didn't give a
Mm.
fuck about that job at that point. Um,
Right.
but you know what? The company was totally cool, and I was liking it to being in the mafia because they were hard on people that were in leadership roles, but they also took care of you when shit like that happened. So
Nice.
the next day, the president of, I mean, this is a $30 billion company, and the president of the company called me personally and said, "Hey, what do you need?" And I said, "Hey, look, Ron, I don't, he since passed away from brain cancer, but I said, Ron, I don't really think I need anything." He cut me off mid sentence. He said, "No, I'm not that. You're not understanding what I'm asking you. You've got three young boys. Your wife is in the hospital. What do you need? Do you need us to send groceries up to your house? Do you need someone to come drive your family around? Do you need a nurse to come stay at your house? We'll take care of it. You tell us what you need, and we'll help you get through this." And so that was the flip side for them being willing to call me. At one time they called me and said, "Hey, you need to go pack a bag and you need to fly to Dallas, Texas, and we don't know when you're coming home." And so that's what I did.
Right.
But the flip side of that is
Mm.
they stepped in those situations. So I always said it was like the mafia. They might call you up and say you need to go perform a hit, but they also were going
Mhm.
to take care of you when stuff happened. But if you look at I think successful people look at those situations, like all the stuff you've talked about, and say, "Hey, I wouldn't be who I was today if I hadn't learned that, if I hadn't gone through
Was
that scenario, you know?"
was that the catalyst for you for starting this podcast?
No, this was a long time ago, but
Okay.
it certainly was the catalyst for me to look at how we had things structured in our life. Because, like, I was just,
Hmm.
I was working 80 hours a week and I was doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And after that, I started coaching my kids' teams and, being at home more. And I certainly still work hard. I'm just that way. I'm a driven person. So no matter what I do, I get after it generally.
Hmm.
And so what I did was I changed some of the things I got after. So I got after being a dad differently. I got after being a husband differently. And sometimes you get those wake up calls and you're like, "Hey, you're focused on the wrong shit." you're, you're not paying attention to the stuff that truly matters and is truly important. And
For me, I think it brings me down to like that moment, the moment, this moment. And so I started thinking like, what is the value of my life in this moment?
mm,
And for me, it was, well, I have every mini second that goes by in the day, I'm having an impact, but I'm unconsciously having an impact. So I wanted to consciously have an impact. What is that impact going to be? And so for me, it became that moment, like appreciating this moment. And at the end of the day, how did my day have an impact? What value was my life that day? And it wasn't like I felt like I was earning the right to live that day. It was more like needing to know that I made use of that day, that I had an impact, that that the moment was, I made a conscious impact as opposed to an unconscious impact. So, yeah, for me, that's kind of where that came from. I'm hearing from you. It brought you down to what was most important in your life, which is your family, right?
Yeah, for sure. And look, I've really never struggled with knowing that's the most important thing. Sometimes it's easy to let the circumstances of life lead you to not act like it's the most important
Right.
thing, And we did a podcast yesterday about auditing the circle of people you're around. Who do you spend the most time with? Because that's who you're going to
Mhm.
become. You're going to become some amalgam of those five people, and vice versa. You're going to rub off on the people that you're around. And do you want to have a positive or a negative impact on the people you're around?
Mm.
And do you want to surround yourself with people that are going to have a positive or a negative impact with you? I think that's what to me is so impressive about your story, Lillian, is you weren't surrounded by a lot of awesome people when you were young, and you still found a
Well, yes
way.
and no, yes and no. There were always people,
Hmm,
like not family, but
sure.
there were always people. When I was first on my own and I was renting an apartment illegally, which I didn't know, of course, because I was stupid. What do I know? I'm just paying rent. And I got, I had a
Well, most
beanbag. That was my
most
furniture,
yeah, most 13-year-olds
one
don't know how to
pot.
read a rental agreement, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had one pot, I had a toaster, and I had a beanbag. That was my apartment in this apartment. And there was this fellow who lived across the street, and he was in a very difficult domestic upbringing as well. He was a
Hmm,
young teenager, and he actually looked out for me. He would make sure that I didn't get past a substance during a party that maybe I shouldn't be exposed to.
yeah.
He would protect me from individuals. He said, "Oh, that's a bad character. Stay away from them. You don't want to go to that person's house." If someone was at my apartment, because people would gather there, he was like, if someone was there that he thought was sketchy or off or anything like that, he never left. There was a time when I had some runaways living with me, and they had gotten loud in the apartment and gotten in trouble. And he waited for me at the door because I had a notice on my door, like, you made noise or whatever, type notice stapled to the door. And he waited for me so I didn't have to see it alone. Like, there were people like that who did gestures my entire life that helped me out. People who would recognize my struggles and my small achievements when I thought I was so far behind and so little and so nothing. And they would say, like, you've really inspired me. I'm going back to school because of you. You've inspired me to do this and all of this. And you're like, what, me? But those moments, those comments, those feedback, those individuals, there was when I was working in hospitality management, and I felt totally out of my league, and I was really, really shy still. Well, I am shy, but really shy then. And so I'm in the board meeting, right? And I'm got my, professional suit on, and I'm trying to be all professional among all these older people. And I was very young looking. And so all of that bled into me feeling very, very inadequate in this room. And I was sort of looking at the floor and looking at my hands. And I got called upon for a suggestion, and I said something and it was accepted. And I was like, wow. And that kind of scared me at the same time. And there was two people across the room who looked at me with such compassion and support. Not like, oh, look at her, I feel so sorry for her or anything like that. It was like,
Yeah.
like good for you, and I'm here supporting you sort of look. And that stayed with me too. Like, you never know what a glance across a boardroom is going to do for someone. You can have that kind of impact. And these things stick with a person, and they keep you going. When I heard from one of my readers that they gave a book that I was terrified to publish, Towards Understanding. And it's basically a poetic chronological story of me growing up into my 20s. And so some of it's a bit raw and kind of
Yeah.
tells a story. And so uh, she gave it to her 42-year-old son. And the story I'll always remember this. And she said, for the very first time, he came out to her, he gave her a hug which he rarely ever did. And he had tears in his eyes. And he said, "This book says everything that I couldn't say." And I'm like, holy crap. And so they actually started talking, which they were never able to do. And he was never able to do. And I'm like, for me, being vulnerable enough to put that out there and terrified the whole time, how's this going to be received? That one person, that one reader made all the difference. I mean that was it. Yay, I did it, I did it. That's what it felt like. So it was just it gave meaning to what I do too. I think we need to like recognize those moments and remind ourselves of those moments, those brief encounters that gave meaning and remember those because we matter. You matter. Y'all matter. Every moment matters, right? And we can have an impact every minute. There was a story someone told in one of the interviews on the radio show, and they were saying their very first job in high school, and they got what they thought was like the bottom scrapings of what was available for summer jobs. I mean, this is crap. I hate this. And they didn't want to do
Yeah.
it, and they dragged their feet to work every day, and they hated it. This elderly woman is obviously having a really tough time. Comes to mail some package or something that had to be mailed that day. And she's a mess. She doesn't know what she's doing. He walks her through, super gentle, helps her back out to her car, makes her really feel special and loved, and gives her a hug and stuff. So she comes back a while later and she says, that day I had to bury my husband,
Oh,
you know? And she had to go there. She had to mail this thing. There was no getting around it. And she was such a mess that she wasn't even sure she could drive there. And that young man totally changed her life at that moment and helped her get through a horrible time, right? And for her coming back and telling him that while he was still there working that summer job changed his attitude about work. He went there every single day in this menial job that he hated doing and he felt was so beneath him. Now was this opportunity to help other people. The impact, like knowing every person he came encounter with, he could have an impact like that. And it just gave him the energy and changed as an adult, changed his direction in his thinking. And his whole passion was about helping other people because of that encounter with her. So, be sure to tell people when they do great things for you because it really does make a difference in their lives.
yeah, that's awesome. It reminds me, Joe DiMaggio, a sports writer, asked him one time, "Why do you play so hard all the time?" And he said, "Look, you never know when there's some 6-year-old kid in the stands whose only chance to see a Yankees game this year is that day. And I don't want to disappoint him if that's the only time he gets to see me play. So I
Yeah,
want to do my best all the time for the people that support our team. Like I loved
right.
like this is Joe DiMaggio. Like he is the Yankees, you know? So if the leader takes that approach, you guess what the rest of the team's going to do. If it's good enough for that guy, it's good enough for you.
Right.
So yeah, I love that. What if somebody's out there struggling with
Hmm.
something, whatever it is, like we've talked about, we've covered a wide variety of things already in our conversation. What would be what words of encouragement and or I hate to use the word advice because I don't think it's the right thing to say, but what would you want them to think about? How would you want them to think about their situation that would be helpful for them?
Okay, so this could be really depressing, but it's also the truth. So there's no one else but you. You. You're the one, right? You're going to have supportive people around you. There's going to be services that might be able to, give you a boost or help you up, with a step up or what have you. Mentors, any of that. Great. That's great that you have that around you if you do. But never mind all that. It's you. You are in this position and you're the only one that's going to get you out. So it doesn't matter what put you in that position. Life came along and slapped you up the head and there you are. Or you're just facing some challenge. in life. Maybe you're in a really awful relationship or household and you need to do something about it. Either way, it's you that's got to do something about it. So knowing that can be super scary because we don't always trust ourselves, especially if we feel less than. We may not trust ourselves as being able to do it, right? So what I would suggest is try to find some mentorship out there. Could be your friend, could be a sister, could be a coworker, could be a neighbor, could be a spouse. Maybe go to some of the family services outlets. Find yourself some mentors, business mentors that are going to be able to help share their stories about how they overcame similar situations that is going to inspire you. They might have resources and contacts. Why reinvent the wheel if they've already done it, you know? We can utilize their what they're willing to share with us to help us along our way. So, while it's always up to us, you're never really alone, you know. So it depends on how you look at it that way. My plan, my approach to things is always, okay, this is the situation I find myself in. That's where I want to go. This is what I want to do. How am I going to get there when this big wall is in front of me? So I have to actually sit down or mentally sit down and figure out what my action plan is going to be. If I have to turn left and go left for 85 miles so I can turn around and get back over here, that's what I'm going to do. So I'll figure out what the steps are, what I can do right now today that's going to start me on the path to to navigating this particular challenge that I'm currently facing. When we went into semi-retirement a little bit earlier than we expected, right? Also, I got officially diagnosed as, disabled. So, that put us in a different financial position as well. So, what are we going to do with that? So, well, I guess it's time we downsize a little earlier than expected. And look at here, here's this perfect home for us at the right perfect time that our house sales. And it's just sometimes when you pivot and you instead of like being stubborn and trying to force your way through something, if you step back and find a more peaceful path around it, all of a sudden, like the universe or whatever starts putting things in your path that says, yeah, this is the right way to go. And it gives you these little moments. It says, yes, this is the right way to go. You just find a way around it. You're traveling around in the river and you come across a log pile and so you carry your canoe over the log pile. You don't sit there banging against the log pile, whining that you're getting bruised. You you get out of the canoe, you strap the oar to yourself and you grab the canoe and you drag it over top and you start over again. You have to do the work. You have to do the hard work. It's not a great answer. We all want the magic pill, the easy fun thing, but it's not a reality, So celebrate the small things, get out of your rut. So the best way to get out of your rut, stop doing what you're doing. Get out and realize that the world is not such a dark place. It's not such an evil place. We're fed all kinds of negative information. We're told how horrible and dark and scary and terrible and everything it is, and scarcity, and everybody's scared, grabbing what they can. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. It isn't that way. It's only that way for the people who put themselves in that mindset. So start feeding yourself with positive things. Surround yourself with positive people, people who are doing good things. Connect yourself with positive things. Start volunteering somewhere. When you start volunteering somewhere, you're giving of yourself, which is just a huge plus. Like all these really wonderful chemicals go off in the head, and you start feeling better about your life. You get out of the rut that you're in. You start seeing positive people doing positive things, and you're going, wow, there's a lot of good things going on in my community. And the more that you get exposed to things like that, the more you start noticing them, right? It's kind of like when you buy a Jeep and all of a sudden, or, some other car, and all of a sudden you see the same color and style of Jeep that you
Yeah.
have, right? So once you get involved in those things, all of a sudden you're like, wow, there's this going on and then there's that going on. So when you're on your Facebook, your socials, whatever, you start even those systems will start showing you more positive things that are happening in your community. It'll say like, oh, look at this event that's happening. Look at that event that's happening. Here's a volunteer opportunity. And so you like those, you share those, you comment on them. Even those types of actions can have a real positive impact in the world, but it also has an impact on you because you become more aware that there's a huge amount of wonderful, great people out there doing incredible things quietly, unsung heroes, right? And we can be one of them too.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, and so the thing I love about it is it's very real. Like it's not rainbows and unicorns. It's not, hey, rah rah. Like that's not the reality of your situation. It's up to you to take action, and you have to take action. Like if you don't like I love what you said, and we say it all the time. If you don't like what's going on, do something different. Have you thought about that? We get so married to our habits and our thoughts, and if you've always done it this way, how's it working out for you? Is it going great? Then don't fucking do it anymore. Like stop doing it. Right? If you're digging your own grave, the first thing to do is to put down the shovel. Like
Hmm.
it's really that straightforward. But again, really easy to say, a lot harder to do
Hmm.
in real life.
Well,
But
just sometimes when you're feeling that vulnerable and that dark, even just the idea of trying or having hope enough to get the energy to try
what's
can
the
be
point,
like
right?
excruciating, right? What's the
Yeah.
point? I'm just going to fail anyway. But the point is to get out of the rut that you're in. Like you say, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're always going to be there. So you have to break out of it. You got to try something different, something new. Even if it's just, taking a walk in the park, like nature is so healing. So take a walk in the park when you feel like it's a safe time to do it, when you're feeling comfortable, when it's less busy and you feel like people aren't looking at you, whatever your thing is, and go and just enjoy and be in nature and let nature start doing some healing and get you out of your negativity. Even just doing that can make a huge impact on the path towards more positive, proactive living.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely love that. Absolutely love it. I meant to ask you when you referenced it earlier, how did you and Dave meet?
Okay, so Dave's a full-time musician, and one of the places that he played at, I loved going to. It was called Jonathan Siegel's down in Kelowna, BC, Canada, and famous wine country there. Anyway, so he was playing there regularly, and quite often, like musicians coming through, big name musicians would come to this place and just jam out with whoever's playing that night, which happened to almost always be Dave's band. And so he got to play with a lot of, big names because of that and got some like gigs as opening for their concerts and stuff like that. Anyway, so he was doing that, and I was sort of in the circles that he was also in the circles of, sort of touch and base there, different contacts. And he was always trying to, I didn't know this, but he was always trying to place himself where he thought I might be. And so eventually, because I mean, I wasn't looking for anybody at the time. And so eventually he basically got my attention. Hey, look at me, I'm over here. And we went for I don't know, some sort of dinner date or something like that. And within a couple of days, we were a solid item. But he took it really, really, really slow with me
Mm.
because, I was ready to bolt and he knew it. I had a bag on my shoulder ready to go kind of thing. So he knew that from the get-go and he never rushed anything. It was weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks before we became intimate. It was a couple of years before we moved in together. It was 8 years after we started dating seriously that I married him. Took him 2 years for me to meet his, or a year or something like that before I would even meet his family, and he just took things really, really slow and gentle with me, and he didn't force me into anything, and that gave me that safe place, gave me that safe place.
Mm. I
Yeah.
love that.
Here we are, what, 35 years later, 36 years later, something like that.
It
Ooh,
goes quick,
36, I
doesn't it?
think.
We're
It
33 years.
does.
My wife and I are 33 years. I'm like, how the hell has it been 33
Yeah.
years?
And the wonderful about that is that every time you have a conversations about remember when and remember this person and oh yeah, so and so, and it's so neat to have those long-term memories together, hey?
Yeah, and there's only one person that gets it like you do. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
the to me that's the coolest part. She's like my favorite person in the world. So,
Oh, that's
yep.
nice.
So one of the things I do, Lillian, so I
Hmm.
ask a lot of questions. We cover a ton of territory. I really appreciate you being so open and candid about all of the things that you've learned through your experiences. But I'm not perfect, and sometimes I miss things. Is there anything I haven't asked you about, or is there any
Hmm.
topic that we haven't talked about that's really important to you that we talk about while we're in front of the audience? So essentially, the floor is yours. Is there anything that you want to get out in the open?
Well, the I would love for people to drop by our blog, the Brummet's Conscious blog. Just give it a search online, you'll find it. There are decades, literally decades of content there for you to scroll through. There's a search box if you're looking for certain topics like getting out of depression, chronic depression, uh, business and entrepreneur advice, author advice, writer interviews, entrepreneur interviews, podcast host interviews, all kinds of stuff. There are decades and decades of content. I encourage you to check that out because there's so much positive information there. Start feeding yourself with that positive information, but you're going to gain a lot of skills. Tons of resources are shared there as well. Lots of nonprofits highlighted there. I really encourage you to check that out. At the end of every blog post, of course, there's like our main links that we like to post, uh, push people towards, which is, of course, our Amazon page and our YouTube page and a few others. So if you go to the blog, you'll find everything that we do from there. All our links are available there, but tons of free information available there for you too. If you're an entrepreneur or podcast host and you'd like to appear as a guest on our blog, just reach out. There's an about page there. Just click on the about page and you can apply for that, learn more information about that. Or networking. We love networking. So if you're into that, just reach out to us with our idea. Again, with your idea, the about page would have information for that. If you're interested in lots of discussions like what we're having here today, check out the media page where I list up to 50 of the most recent media appearances that Dave and or I excuse me, have participated in because he does them too. So you can check them out there.
Awesome. I love that. And just so you don't have to go far. We'll put all of the information that Lillian just talked about in the show notes. So you can just look at the bottom of the episode. It'll all be there. And you can go right to the blog and all the awesome information that Lillian talked about. And so just for clarity, Lillian, that is like your personal musings for decades, right?
Decades. Yeah.
Yeah.
Decades. Yeah. With plural. Yeah. Yeah. We're heading towards almost 3 decades now on that blog. Well, not quite, but it's, I think, 26, 27 years, something like that, that the blog has been going. So yeah, decades. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
is awesome.
I love the blog. For me, it's a way, of course, of keeping people aware of our various activities, where we're appearing or, interviews like this and all of that. But it also gives me a great, as an entrepreneur, it gives me a great networking tool. That particular blog has 30,000 visits per month on average. Some of the months have been as, up to 140,000. So we utilize that popular platform to solidify our relationships with the contacts that we've already developed, but also with future connections. So we can then approach them like what I would do, say, for someone like yourself. I might approach you in a month or two and say, hey, how would you like to come on the blog for an interview about your entrepreneurship? And you would come in to talk about what it's like to be an entrepreneur and what your life is like and some of the skills that you can pass on. And maybe 6 months later, I'll approach you again and say, hey, why don't I have you come in to talk about your podcast and what it's like to be a podcast host? So it
Mm,
helps me keep connection and still highlight these individuals, but we're always building this strong relationship with these contacts. So as an entrepreneur, it's a valuable tool, absolutely valuable tool. It introduces me to a lot of great contacts too. So people will come in like agents and publishers and, people who work in the world of entrepreneurship or who work in the world of writers groups or something like that. And maybe they'll have me, because they experienced our information on the blog, they'll want me to come in as a guest speaker for their writers group or something like that. So there's a lot of really good benefits as an entrepreneur from it. But emotionally speaking, that is probably never ever going to go. I
mm,
love the blog. I love what it does for me personally. I get to write articles and express how I'm feeling about different things and share them and share poetry and all kinds of stuff there. So, and to get feedback from people is so cool. So, yeah.
I love that. Sounds like a cool thing. I glanced at it. I haven't read it in any detail, but I've got a bookmark so that when I get a little bit of time, I can go through it a little
Okay.
bit more detail. So absolutely love that. Well, I would love to stay connected and maybe I don't know if you and Dave do this, but I'd love to have you guys on at the same time on a future episode. I don't know what you think about that.
That'd be very cool.
I would love to do
That would,
that. So
yeah.
yeah, let's stay in contact on that and we can do that somewhere down the
Okay.
road. But I just was thinking while you were talking, I'd love to hear his perspective on like you've been so complimentary about how he handled things and his approach. And I'd love to hear about the drumming business and the music business. I look at those as two intertwined but separate businesses. I'd love to learn more about those things. I'm always curious when I hear about those. But yeah, we'll keep in touch. We'll get it set up. Like we know how
That'd
to
be
get in touch with
great.
each other and we'll get that set up. But thank you, Lillian, so much for coming on the show
Of
tonight.
course.
And you just did a great job. Loved our conversation.
Thank you.
Loved the message that you shared, and looking forward to the next time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Lillian. Have a great week.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
Great job, Lillian. You did so
Thank
good. I
you.
really appreciate you coming on. And
Oh,
yeah,
great.
that episode's going to be awesome. I can't wait for it to air.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much. I had a great time. It was a really good conversation. I liked it. So yeah, we'll continue networking, I think, and would love to be a guest again. And Dave, I know he'd be a phenomenal guest to talk about teaching and the impact on music and impact on his students, and that he would love that. So I'll mention that to him. And of course, we're going to want to have you on our blog too. We're going to want to
Oh,
feature
for
you
sure.
there. So we'll talk behind the scenes when, yeah. But
Yeah,
how
100%. Yeah,
exciting!
look,
And
yeah, I
I've
don't say things
got
I don't mean. So
no me either.
yeah.
Yep, yep, at all. Yeah, yeah. If you're curious, when you go to the blog, just go to the about page, and it has a little description right at the top of what the interviews are kind of like, what the process is. And then from there, what I do for interviews on the blog, it's all done email. So I would email you a list of questions, and you would choose from those questions whatever you feel you could talk about. And then you would submit that to me when it's complete. So it's very casual. Once I receive it, it goes through a brief approval process, which most of them are approved, and then it gets scheduled for publication at that point based on whatever dates I have available. But
Oh, very
yeah,
cool.
so
Yeah, I'd love
I
to
would
do it.
love to. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
be happy to do it.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great, actually, because I would love to have you as a guest. I have questions. I have questions. Yeah. So,
yeah, it's funny because I usually warn people, don't ask me questions you don't want real answers to, because like I'm not a sugar coater, I'm not a punch puller. That can be good and bad. Like when I coached, I used to tell that to parents when I coached their kids. I'm like, look, you can ask me any question you want, but you need to think about it carefully because I'm not gonna like, I'd have, why doesn't Jimmy play more? Because Jimmy's lazy and Jimmy doesn't give a shit about the team. So Jimmy's not gonna play a lot. So that's why Jimmy doesn't play more. What's next? Like they're
Yeah.
used to people shining him on. I'm not one of those guys.
Yeah.
Or Jimmy's not real talented. Jimmy doesn't
Well,
practice
I think
hard.
that's why
So,
we get along so well.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Well,
this
great
has been
stuff, Lillian.
fun.
Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it too very much. And for all your team behind the scenes there too. Thank you for supporting us in all of this.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I'm gonna stick around. I usually record the
Yep.
intro and the outro after
Okay.
the episode. That way James got us all in one spot. So when he does his editing, it makes it easier for him.
Sure. Sure. Kick me
Yeah.
on out. I'm out.
Nope, you're good.
I'll leave
Make sure
now.
to send. Can you make sure you send me because I should be able to get to it this weekend,
Yep.
the blog, and I'd love to. I'd
Okay.
love to participate in that 100%.
Oh,
So
that'd be fantastic.
yeah,
Yay. That would be
shoot,
fantastic.
shoot
Good.
it my way and I'll get it done.
Okay. I'll do that. Thanks.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Elaine. Have a great week.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, there you go. So it's always so humbling to me, and we appreciate so much our guests' willingness to be honest and candid about really difficult things. So Lillian talked about a very difficult childhood, multiple different really challenging experiences, and even into adulthood, some of those really challenging experiences. And then the business that she and her husband Dave have built over the last several decades together. And what a neat lady. What an awesome lady. Super appreciative that she was willing to come on and share those experiences with us and share what she's learned and share that guidance with our audience. And very happy that she asked us to participate in as a guest on her blog and podcast. And we're going to do that. And then we stayed on after the recording, and we're talking about when we can get her and Dave on. So let's have both of them come back on because Lillian by herself is awesome. I'm sure it's even better when we have both of them together, and we're looking forward to that. So special thanks to her, and you will see her again when we bring them back on. So James puts it up over here every day. Don't forget to head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All the podcast episodes are there. Links to all the social media accounts are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to on our website. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. We find awesome people. They give you awesome advice and lessons that they've learned to build a meaningful, purposeful life. You don't want to miss the next guest because we keep finding awesome people like Lillian, like all of our previous guests. We're going to keep getting them on here. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you catch our next episode. We will see you there.